the Growth Factor, where we aim to spark new thinking by creating light bulb moments for accounting firm leaders on how to deliver transformational growth in your firm. I'm Chris Smith, the Chief Growth Officer at QuickFee, and today I have one special guest that I almost thought about renaming my show the Toth Factor because of how much he knows about growth. So I would like to welcome David Toth from Winding River Consulting. David, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, Chris. It's August going on September, 75 and sunny Friday, and I get to start my day with you.
Are you rubbing that in because you know we're here in Plano and it is 100 degrees to start off every single day?
It's a little warm. We're getting that back next week. But Chris, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, you bet. So, David, I'm going to guess that most people who end up coming across this content have seen your face on social media at different events. You do a lot of speaking engagements, but if you wouldn't mind, for that little few that does not know about David and Winding River Consulting, can you just give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, 100%. You know, Chris, one of my goals right now is once a week meeting somebody new, managing partner, a firm, a vendor, consultant. And, you know, by doing that, continuing to hone in on that message of what does Winding River do today and where we started and where we want to go. And really, we focus on helping firms grow. We're helping firms build their practices. And a lot of that is really in two different facets. Primarily under strategy. The first is leadership development. We've really gotten deep into helping partners, helping leaders accelerate their leadership journey, knowing how critical strong leadership is in today's firm. We have two boot camp programs, one for new partners, one for managing partners. We have a community of over 200 alumni from 5 continents. It's really been an incredible journey that 25% of the top 400 managing partners have gone through that program. And in addition to that, we own 2 conferences. So leadership development is a really core part to who we are and what we do, helping firm leaders navigate the future, if you will. And then the second piece is consulting and advisory, you know, talking about how we're helping practices grow. We focus on strategic growth planning, partner retreats, firm retreats, advisory boards, practice management consulting, digital, and whether or not, you know, it's a core focus, M&A and private equity a little bit. So it's been really exciting. My partner, Gary Shamus, founded it after selling the 37th largest firm, his firm, SS&G, to BDO in 2014, launched it in 2016. And today, you know, we're thriving, we're growing. It's busier than ever.
Yeah. Well, I can say, so you and I have known each other for roughly almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
And we were connected through your event that you hosted in Atlanta twice now that I've been to, Digital Deep Dive. And what I can say is I love the energy. It's a good core group. You know, sometimes you go to these really large events and they're good, but you lose that kind of that group camaraderie that you can get over a day and a half by bringing everybody together. And also excited about Winning Ways coming up in November.
I think you hit it on the head, right? Small events, post-pandemic, people want experiences. They want value. Time is more precious than ever. And so we built our programs, our 2 conferences, Digital Deep Dive and Winning Ways, around that theme. The difference really between the two, Digital Deep Dive is meant for growth leaders, marketers, right? People touching digital within your firm to drive revenue, to drive demand, to drive growth. Winning Ways, much more practice management oriented. Every year is a new theme where we dive deep into one topic. And so this year, talking about leadership development, how critical it is today, that's what we're focusing on, is developing the future leaders of the profession. It's more difficult and challenging than ever before, not just with firm dynamics, but with the way the industry is evolving. And so I'm really excited to have QuickFee as a partner this year, November 7th and 8th in Chicago. It'll be here before we know it.
Yes, it will. So, all right, I've got some fun topics for us to jump into. And one of the things I love about David is he just likes to be present in the moment. So I told him I'm holding off any questions, sending them over so that we can just have a fun conversation here. So the first place I'd like to start, David, is the role of Chief Growth Officer. Now, you and I both hold those titles, but those are titles that are very common inside of the accounting industry. And I've seen that it can mean so many different things. You know, when people think about what would a chief growth officer do for my firm? So I'd like to dive into that a little bit. And if you would, what have you seen as the role of a chief growth officer inside of the accounting industry?
Yeah. So, we were chatting about this a little bit earlier. And I think in a lot of cases that role's evolving right now in the
Hmm.
industry, within the profession. In a lot of cases, the way that I look at it is really to be a part of driving long term strategy for firms' growth going forward. And in a lot of cases, that's not always the role that necessarily plays because in accounting firms in a partnership model, the partners are the one that are really driving the growth and the vision of the firm. The
Yeah.
CGO is helping with the execution and on the tactical side. They're maybe helping with specific initiatives or one-offs, but they're not really, a part of that conversation necessarily when it comes to that long-term growth strategy. Sometimes CGOs are very focused on M&A.
Hmm.
Sometimes they're very focused on, helping professionals build the skill sets of becoming a rainmaker or a mistmaker in some cases, right? But not necessarily looking at it holistically. Now, what I do see happening is that
Hmm.
becoming a much more critical conversation because of not only the way that our clients' needs are evolving and becoming more sophisticated and challenging, but the way we need to grow more intentionally and knowing how many different alternative firm structures are out there today from a growth
Yeah.
perspective, thinking more B2B corporate business growth than traditional partnership types of models.
Yeah. So if you were to guide a firm on skill sets that should be displayed across a chief growth officer, what are some of the things that come to mind that these people do really well?
Yeah. So I think, it really starts with having a good understanding of strategy.
Yes.
Strategy can be easy when you understand how to evolve a playbook to win. But I think in a lot of cases, this role has been very tactical in nature. And in today's, more sophisticated market, we need to be strategic. So one of those elements is understanding how to develop strategy amongst a partnership, amongst, the firm itself. I think the second piece of this is really understanding how to go from maybe a generalist approach to more of a specialized or niche or industry type of an approach,
Mhm.
right? So as we're building that strategy, knowing that we need to be able to go deeper with services and specific types of segments, knowing that we can win business nationally because of the way digital is influencing or impacting buyers' journeys requires a more one-to-one, expertise-driven approach. And then the third piece to this is really thinking more about leadership,
Yeah.
and how are we helping leadership develop the skill sets they need going forward. In a lot of different cases, it's not just about driving revenue, it's understanding what do we need to do in order to, hey, the firm wants to grow this practice. We don't have enough people. So capacity becomes a big part of that conversation and developing playbooks to help recruit laterals and recruit other types of talent or look at offshoring types of roles. Sometimes that'll come into the play. When I look at growth, I look at it from a traditional, a digital, and M&A perspective. And so
Mhm.
how are we developing strategies for all three of those areas, knowing that we may not do all three of those,
Yeah.
but somebody has to be accountable. Somebody has to own growth in a firm. And in today's world, a managing partner, maybe traditionally executive committee, those roles owned it. They're busier than ever. And
Yeah.
so we need to have somebody with that skill set really owning what growth means today, whether that's a CRM system, technology, developing, specific strategies for industries or verticals we want to get into.
And do you see the chief growth officer as someone who needs to come from within an accounting firm, or have you seen it also come from outside of the typical industry? And just curious of your thoughts on what you've seen and what the impact has been.
That's such a great question. I'm seeing both now. I
Yeah.
really am. And I think that's important. It's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day and I didn't come from within the industry. I've been exposed to it.
Yeah.
My wife's been an accountant. I've worked with my partner for a long time in consulting roles. I've been more of an entrepreneur in disruptive industries. And I bring this unique perspective that I don't think has really innovated the way firms can go to market sometimes. And so that's something I've really enjoyed. And then I'm starting to see firms bring in different types of growth leaders as well that are both within the industry and outside of the industry. When you look at the private equity platforms, there's
Yeah.
one specifically that's really building a robust platform, as and they bring in a CGO to every firm they acquire outside of the industry. That is part of their strategy
Okay.
intentionally going forward. And the
Yeah.
roles that CGO plays isn't just about owning the growth strategy long term. It's understanding the immediate impacts on the financials and the operations of the firm to help us get there. So they're having a much more hands-on type of role
Yeah.
when it comes to driving the strategy of the firm going forward. But I think it's something that you have to look at both opportunities. Do you have somebody in the firm or within your ecosystem within the industry that makes sense, that can accomplish what you think is needed? Or is it best for us to get a fresh perspective, and maybe have some experience that overlaps with professional services? But we're starting to see more and more people come from out of the industry, out of the profession, and taking that type of role.
Yeah.
Is
No,
that
I
is
think
that kind of echo what you see?
yeah, it does. And I think part of it is you can have it come from either way, right? So there's not a right or wrong in what you do here, but sometimes a fresh perspective of how to implement growth strategies
Yeah.
is something that can open up that aperture. So where you might have had blind spots before, you have somebody coming in that has a new look to it. And I think sometimes we think about growth as just top line revenue.
Yep.
It's just, we're going to go grow revenue and sell more. And what you just mentioned too is growth is all around the business, ultimately with profitability that's mixed in too. So and right now, we can be on fire inside any of our businesses working on process improvement, automation, AI. Like there's so much there that it's
Yep.
almost like it's a very big world in which you can go into and have an impact on growth. And I think one of the best steps is, to your point, somebody needs accountability.
Yeah.
Just start by acknowledging we are on a growth journey. And when you do that, ultimately, most people are going to start working on their strategy and they're going to start surfacing good ideas and they're
Yep.
going to start working. I'd add in one thing, but I'd like to get your thought on this too, is I feel like a successful CGO is the ultimate collaborator. They can work
I think you
cross
have to
functionally.
be.
Yes. Yes.
What is the success of a CGO at the end of the day, in my opinion? It's getting growth to be part of your DNA and your
Yeah.
culture. If you can get every person in that firm waking up and saying, how are we growing today? Or, getting excited about taking a new phone call or exploring something new or never
Yeah.
eating alone or, meeting somebody new once a week. If you can get that growth mindset into your culture and then
Yes.
somebody's helping project that
Yeah.
to elevate that, I think that's a huge, huge outcome that you can get from a CGO. I also think a huge part to chief growth officer is getting a lot of the mindset change to occur within a firm, meaning we're used to marketing being administrative, overhead driven, a role that might help us fill the pipeline or make an impact, but it's helping with
Hmm.
proposals. And, in order for us to start realizing what those types of people can do to help with the firm, you got to get growth into that narrative.
Yeah.
And I think CGOs have a unique opportunity to do that.
Now, what about on the other side? So, our listeners here, can be on the side where they're growing, but they don't have the resources yet to hire a chief growth officer. But they're very interested in growth. That's part of
Yep.
why we all sign up inside of the business world. Growth should be somewhere in there. But what would you say for firms outside of the top 500 that still are ambitious on what they want to do, but want to take advantage of some of these things that a chief growth officer would do? What would you recommend to them?
Well, a couple of different thoughts. The first one is you kind of hit on this a little bit. Growth isn't always about top line revenue. In a lot
Hmm.
of cases, growth is about profitability. Can we take what we've got and make it more profitable and increase our margins? And strategically speaking, That's something that every firm, no matter what size you are, can take advantage of today. How do we become more profitable and increase those margins if we're happy with the business that we have and the people that we are serving those clients, right? So
Yeah.
to me, that's something all of us can do. And if you focus on that, that means you're focusing on having a really healthy business, which is what we should be doing. That's what we're
Yeah.
advising our clients on to do. But then you start talking to firms, and WIP's an issue, AR is an issue, realization's an issue. These are things that we can tackle one at a time. That's part of growth that's going to make a difference of what matters into our pockets, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that we have to come back to. I think the second thing is be educated. What tools do you have around you to understand, okay, we know there's tons of ways we can go with driving demand,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's digital, whether it's traditional, events, email, snail mail, right? We can't do everything. We got to really be able to focus on one or two priorities and make sure we execute those priorities all the way through. Strategy in those cases is easy. It's execution that becomes really hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's creating some sort of level of accountability. But the third piece to that, and I always go back to this, is know your audience. Right now, in today's world, when there's more noise in the marketplace than ever before, um, we need to be able to break through that noise. And the way that you can do that is figuring out who the audience is you're going to be focusing on as part of that growth strategy. It could be a small business owner in Cleveland, Ohio. It could be a subdivision of a manufacturing company, right? Manufacturing is a huge category. Let's niche that down to, concrete or,
Yeah.
drones or something very specific. The more niche you can become, the easier it is in today's world for you to grow and scale. And that doesn't just have to be an industry. It could be a service line. It could be a geography, right? We have to figure out what that means to us. But in most cases, that's where I tell every firm to try to start, in their growth journey, is really know who you're targeting and what your audience looks like.
It's a really good point, because I always think whenever I feel myself where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit lost in whatever I'm doing, I always go back into seek clarity first. It's
Yep.
something that, I love the book High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard. That's one of his things. Seek clarity first. And when you take that step back moment, it's amazing how back on track, you can get to go and
Yeah.
do these things. So I think it's a really good point. When it comes to transformational growth and the things that are getting in a way from a firm, no matter what size, but they're doing something where you're like, oh my gosh, you have some thinking that's holding you back from taking what could be a next step. I'm curious if there's anything that comes to mind for you, and I'll share one first
Yeah.
to kind of tee
It's a
this
deep
up. Is
question. I like it.
yeah, is um, we talk to a lot of firms inside of QuickFee, and one of the ones that I just think, oh my gosh, there's so much more, is we're so busy, we're turning away business. And you know what? We just go through referrals. We don't have to go and find new business. We just get it through referrals. And I go, oh, that's not proactive, right? There's still a whole nother proactive piece missing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you could do so much more. Like that's not something you want to be proud of per se, but I'm just curious of what do you see? It's thinking that's holding people back, and you're just like, no, that is not right.
Honestly, right now it's capacity. It's
Yeah.
people's time. It's more precious than ever. We know the industry is struggling with talent. We know it's not changing in the near future. And that's really changing the way people are conducting the way they brought in business and the way they're nurturing business and the way they're training future leaders of the profession, right? We
Mm-hmm.
are so busy today serving existing clients and serving the opportunities that are coming to us. We're not focusing on a lot of what's gotten us to where we were in our
Yeah.
journey historically of what made us a partner at a firm. And that's really impacting, their profession significantly. From the flip side of it, new generations, the way they want to work is also very different, right? So I think when it comes to, this organic growth that has been coming to us, people saying my belly's full, I don't need more of it right now, we're not going to get proactive. Yeah, you have to address what those challenges are, because if you're not growing, it becomes really hard to recruit the talent that's going to help you
Exactly.
continue to fuel the growth of your firm going forward. So all of a sudden, right, you have all of these different connectors that are happening beyond just the growth conversation that require the execution of servicing clients to the quality that your firm is used to executing on, right? So
Yeah.
it's all interconnected. But when that happens, what I'm starting to see are definitely firms saying, hey, organic growth wasn't what it used to be. We're not necessarily seeing the same types of opportunities. We're still really busy, but how do we get proactive to start
Yeah.
focusing on those that we do want, right? And so no matter what size firm you are, every firm has the ability to go upstream right now and
Yeah.
capture larger opportunities. Why? Because of all the consolidation happening. There's 16 to 17 $1 billion firms, depending where Eisner is.
Yeah.
They just made an acquisition. So that'll probably get them over the $1 billion mark. 17 $1 billion firms. You have all these PE firms, probably 30, 35 deals done over the last 3 years, still small, but consolidation in general. And so it's giving firms an opportunity to go upstream and take these clients that are getting lost by the consolidation happening for us to go upstream. And so you can be more intentional with where your time's being spent. But going back to this whole transformational growth, clarity and focus is key, because if you don't have that, you end up with a bunch of clients that you don't want to serve or aren't the right fit for your firm. And that's
Yeah.
when you really start getting into trouble. Your people don't want to work on it. They're not treated well. And so practice management is equally important around this transformational growth conversation as it is the leaders that are responsible or accountable for it.
So here's another one for you. I think, and this one should hit close to home for you, but I think there's lack of trust in using the digital channel as a formidable place to educate and build a relationship with clients. And you can see it on a lot of websites, right? They're very,
Yeah.
cookie cutter. And although they will say services and some, who we are, they don't package up the essence of like what the value is back to the person
And how to build
who's
the
reaching out.
relationship, right?
Exactly. So I'm curious on I know what your stance will be, but what are some light bulb moments that we can help trigger people who are sitting there going, you know what, I've never really cared about my website because I'm the relationship person, and get them to think differently about how the web or digital can actually help strengthen that relationship?
So one of the first things I always love looking at is like, how many times do we say we, us, I, or our firm's name on the homepage of our website, and why we're
Yeah.
the best at what we do, right?
Yeah.
Versus you, your problems, your challenges, how we can help you in that narrative. The fact of the matter is, 5 years ago, 72% of B2B buyers were going online before reaching out to any service provider to do their own research. Today, that number's up to 80%. So
Mm-hmm.
80% of that journey, whether it's where you're going to work, who you're going to buy services from, what relationship you're going to renew for the future, starts by in control of the buyer. They're on their phone, they're on the web, they're in social media, they're doing all of the research, just like you and I do
Yeah.
today when we're buying a watch or
Yeah.
looking to buy a new car. We're in control of that journey. We're used to being able to say, oh, I don't know, but my cell phone sure does. And I
Yes.
can go immediately to
Yes.
my phone, ask Siri whatever I need to do. And the reality is, to your point, if we're not being intentional with our digital strategy and our web, our footprint in general, right, people are going to read what's there and make their own opinions around it. We are 1000% in control of that journey. And so why don't we spend more time figuring out what we want people to remember when they look at the 3 to 4 other websites that are competing against
Yeah.
us, whether, again, that's for talent, whether that's for new business, whether that's for renewing an existing client. We have the ability to impact that journey. We're just not doing a good enough job at it, knowing that this is how we build relationships today.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So we just went with a customer success management platform, and I was up with two really good vendors. They
Yeah.
both were really good. One of them, from a product perspective, you may even go, oh man, that is really good. But the one thing that I just could not get in sync with that company is they slowed down my buying process, because they
Okay.
made it so people heavy. Everything I did, I had to go through them
It
to
drives
get
you nuts.
information. And it's so frustrating
Yeah.
because I fall in, I was born 1980, so I claim either Gen X or Gen Y, depending on which one benefits me. But, I've lived in a non-digital world and I've lived in a digital world. And I would say I I am so my expectation is to get a lot of information without having to talk to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I just think anybody who's not putting into their website to be that, I call it that player piano. So while everybody else is away, the music keeps playing.
Yep.
And that is your player piano employee, digital employee that is out there doing a lot of work. And the thing is, people want it. They,
Yep.
they do enjoy the face to face, but they want that. Anytime I want to go and learn and research, that I want to be able to do that. And I just think it's such a powerful tool when it works, and it can harm when you just let it go and say,
Oh yeah.
that's not really.
You
It's
don't
just
turn off your website after 5 p.m. That's on
yes,
24/7,
yes, yes,
365. Same with
yes,
social media, right? I
yes.
posted on LinkedIn this week. I saw a study done that now said Gen Z uses social media and AI more than Google or search engines to do their research going forward, right? Now, I'm not saying, okay, great, let's stop worrying about SEO and go focus on social media, but we know that, over the next decade, that's going to be a huge
Yeah.
influencer in the way we connect with our future buyers and future talent. And to your point, digital marketing is now marketing. To me, there's no,
Yes.
it's part of it, right? No, it is it.
Yes. Yes. I agree. So one other thing that I have always appreciated about you is, and especially going to your events, and I love this is some of the great information you get from peer sharing too. Not even just presentations, but you get a good chance to collaborate with others and hear what they're doing. But you are always, I'm going to categorize you as likely an early adopter when it comes to new technology, and not just looking for technology specific to accounting, like you using technology to
My
help
wife hates
you.
me for it, Chris.
I bet. I bet. But I always pick up some good, applications or things to check out
Yeah.
anytime I'm around you. And I'm curious do you have anything right now that you're like, you know what? If you like doing this, check this out.
Ah, I love that. So I do, right? I have a firm. It's a law firm, small entrepreneurial. All of their business comes through digital. That just started using a tool called Cassidy AI. And
Okay.
so, the reason I bring this up is we've got ChatGPT, we've got Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, right? And they're all bots. What Cassidy has done is kind of created a more centralized, user-friendly platform where they bring all the LLMs into one place, and you can build different knowledge bases based on an industry, a service line, a vertical, and then it creates the prompts or the bots for you, workflows that you need. You can use it for internal bots. Let's say we have professionals in our construction practice that want to create their own social media content. We built this huge knowledge base of all of this information we've developed over years on YouTube, on our website, on blogs, on
Mm-hmm.
PDFs and PowerPoints. Help me write a social media post about the bonding requirements before tax season or something to that
Yeah.
effect. And it can do it for you instead of asking marketing how to help. In some cases, use now we're able to create SEO content at scale that's performing really, really well
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
an AI tool like this that learns your tone, that learns your voice, that learns Google's best practices for search engine, results, right? So we're combining all of this information into one place, and now we've got kind of this nice internal infrastructure of an AI hub that we can deploy as part of growth going forward. And watching this law firm be able to execute that strategy at scale, they got rid of their full-time content writer because of
Yeah.
it. It's performing that well for them today, where we know we can now say, hey, this $30,000 investment equals an FTE because of the
Yeah.
output they're generating for us going forward. So I see so many people talking about
Yeah.
AI, but what's been a challenge is how to manipulate the bots in a way that's going to work for you or your workflows versus let's get a platform in place that helps you execute that without having to bring IT and all of these other barriers in when it comes to the strategy itself.
Yeah. But wouldn't you say overall, it's fairly easy to use once you just spend some
Oh yeah.
time, not just Cassidy AI, but just in general, when you're thinking about using AI, I remember, back at Digital Deep Dive when the first event, it was when generative AI just kind of exploded, right? And everybody's like,
Yep.
"Oh my gosh!" And it's gotten so much better, from now. But even like I love to play around with automation,
Yep.
and I'm not a techie person at all, but Microsoft offers something called Power Automate. And
Yep.
so in the morning, I have Gong, Accounting Today, Salesforce, um, Perplexity AI, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot. I have our internal systems. There's roughly like 10 websites I have to log into. And I was just thinking, how can I use, just me, how can I get
Yep.
familiar with this and use it? And so I built a desktop flow that, you plug in all the steps. I probably spent 45 minutes doing it. But now I click a run button and all of those sign in. They sign into everything,
Yep.
and I just watch them line up all beautifully in the morning. But imagine everybody taking a step back moment to just look at what is something I'm doing today that technology can improve. It doesn't take away the value of the work and the output
Correct.
I'm going to do, but it takes away the low value task part of it.
Yep. Yep. There's so much potential. I mean, I remember at Digital Deep Dive, you spent some time sharing how you guys are using AI in your sales process,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not overly complicated. It's just a matter of
Doing
finding the
it.
time to doing it, right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
educating people about what this really means for them going forward. And so I think that there's no question it's going to be a part of the future of how we work, not just in accounting, but globally. It's more so of where do you prioritize that first step,
Yeah.
and then create a culture that's going to allow for some of this innovation along the way. How do we get other people within our firm to help us develop these initiatives at the same time? And so,
Yeah.
I think that that's spot on. I haven't built a workflow like you're talking about. That sounds awesome.
Yep. I'll have to share it
You
with
know,
you. Yeah.
yeah, very cool. Any other tools that top of mind for you, that you're playing with these days on the AI front?
So yes, so Perplexity is a great
Oh
research
yeah.
AI, right? So if
Yep.
anybody's going to Google and doing research, not knocking on Google, but go to Perplexity, and
Yeah.
the way that you can interact with it and the level of detail it gives back is so good. But another cool one that I'm dipping my toe into is because as a chief growth officer at QuickFee, I have sales, I have marketing, I have customer success, and I have strategy. And one area where I want to improve is just our content and the value of our content. So there's this cool platform called make.com that can integrate these different things like ChatGPT, a Google spreadsheet, Airtable. It's limitless. And the only thing you have to learn, and I'm learning this right now, is how to find an API key and put it
Oh,
into in
that's the
here.
easy part,
And
though.
that's
That's
yeah.
the
And
easy
once
part.
once you do that though, you're linking up all of this intelligence that you can give instructions to. And
So
yes, go ahead.
it's so cool you think about that. One quick story. I had my
Yeah.
first client tell me they got their first client from AI,
Yes. That's
from
so cool.
ChatGPT, right?
Yes.
Have you gone to ChatGPT and searched your firm? What does XYZ do?
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
what do they
Yeah.
say? HubSpot just released a tool called AI Search Grader. So if you Google HubSpot AI Search Grader, it'll come up. It asks you to plop in your brand name, what you do, and then it gives you a sentiment score on how
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is perceiving your brand
Yeah.
search equity within GBT. Google has lost about 2% of its traffic because of AI, and their algorithms are all over the place. Because,
Yeah.
as you know, when you search now, sometimes you get AI results in there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You have a lot of different types of advertisement formats today. So, all of these things are being impacted by AI. But I challenge everybody listening today, if there's one thing you do or walk away with, go to Perplexity, go to GBT, go to Claude, go to Gemini, and do a little bit of research about what's the best CPA firm to work with in wineries. What does this CPA firm do? And then start realizing, hey, wait a second, we need to start thinking about how we're training and giving
Yeah.
content to some of these bots going
Yeah.
forward, because a lot of people are starting to do research using
Yes.
GBT and AI models versus just search engines.
I agree. Not even kidding. 90% of the time I'm using Perplexity now.
Right? It's
And,
great.
and I feel bad for Google. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't be the only one doing this. But it's a
Yep.
really good point. There's new ways that people are going to find
Yeah.
content and do research. How are you showing up there? And I would say, the key thoughts I have kind of thinking through what we've just discussed is if I'm sitting inside of a firm and this stuff sounds scary, it's not as scary as it
Yeah.
sounds. I
Nope.
do think if it scares you, there's somebody inside of your firm that it doesn't, and they get
Yep.
excited by it. And how do you pull that person in who doesn't have to be a deep technologist? They just like strategy and they like solving problems and they're good at collaborating. If you can find that person, you can task them with where can we automate the business and create wins? Where can we
Well,
do this to scale?
it's such a good point. And just bringing this conversation full circle, what's a chief growth officer's role? Part of it's innovation and understanding what risks can we
Yeah.
take in order for us to grow going forward. You and I both wear that title in very different ways, but we're both passionate about knowing at least 10 to 15% of our time is figuring out how we innovate. And yeah, we
Yes.
might adopt something or go down a path that fails, but we can't say we didn't try. Nothing venture, nothing gain. And if you
Yes.
can gain just this much out of a specific opportunity, right? Whether that's new business, whether it's efficiency. Hey, we were going to go hire this FTE, but we decided we're going to try to subsidize that through a technology strategy instead, right? And in 3 months from now, we haven't achieved success, then we can come back to the drawing board. I mean, I think that's a huge part of that role today.
Yeah, yeah, that is actually, you just hit one of the things that, and it's not anti like people, right? So I love
Yeah.
like it's nothing to do about replacing people,
No.
but I have a technology first strategy, which means if you can get technology to do the process, it will never technically it will never fail you, or it will provide
Yep.
less risk than a person doing it. So it's a really good point is, can you do it first with technology? Because if you can probably do it better
Yep.
for less or for less money, and then you can then go and invest that somewhere else. And it's just that part. And then if it doesn't work, come back and then you tried. But I do think I would say that is another good point of challenge yourself before you go to hire a person. Could I do this through technology? And that'll
Yeah.
open up new ways of thinking.
The last thing that I would say to this conversation that I've enjoyed, and you mentioned our 2-year relationship now, plus or minus, was a book that you recommended me calling Playing to Win,
Yes.
and having that offensive mindset because growth leaders need to be able to bring that type of attitude to the conversation in our accounting firms today, right? We need to play to win. We need to build a narrative around that. We need to understand how we're going to control that strategy around success going forward and making sure that's built into our culture. And so it was a great book. It was a great direction,
Yeah.
great concept that, again, just plays back to the importance of what we're trying to talk about with this role, Chief Growth Officer.
Yes. So then would that be I like to always end with, if there's
Yeah.
just one light bulb moment, one leave behind that you give everybody, is it to think about playing to win, or do you have one other thing you'd like to add into there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely. I think right now what's so critical is the narrative and culture that we're trying to build within firms around growth,
Hmm.
because it's changing. And so, if there is one thing that you have to focus on is what is that playing to win strategy that you're focused within your firm to help it continue to grow. And like you said, it's not always about driving revenue. There's a lot of different things that ultimately means, but understanding that we can't be everything to everybody, that we can't do everything. We've got to be able to prioritize, and having that focus, if it is playing to win in that case, allows you to help prioritize what you should or shouldn't be working on today, tomorrow, next week, and next year.
Awesome. Well, David, I've really enjoyed this. If we are not careful, we could probably go on for another 2 hours because you and I can get really geeked out on this kind of stuff. Appreciate everything you're doing, and glad you were able to join us today.
Awesome, Chris. Congrats on the launch of the podcast, and looking forward to being one of your top listeners.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Take care, David.